Welcome to The Cynical Developer, the podcast that helps you to improve your development knowledge and career through explaining the latest and greatest in development technology and providing you with what you need to succeed as a developer. We've recently launched our Patreon page, which can be found at cynicaldeveloper.com/Patreon. If you aren't familiar with Patreon, it's an easy way for those who are interested in this show to help out by simply pledging a small amount each month in sponsorship. Now that could be as little as $5 a month, which is about £3.80, or as much as you like. You will enable us to dedicate more time creating more content to help you, including videos, more blog posts, and even more shows. So if you can, head over to cynicaldeveloper.com/Patreon and get involved. If you're listening to this episode on release day, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and all that jazz, but seriously, what are you doing listening to a podcast on Christmas Day? Surely you should be with your family and friends, or something more exciting than sitting there listening to me. Well, I guess that is unless you don't celebrate this holiday. Yeah. Anyway, in this episode I want to talk about coding style. It's something that I get on my soapbox about quite a lot, to be honest. But it's something that I think is worthwhile discussing. But before we get into it, for those that you are unsure what I mean by coding styles, they're also known as programming styles or programming guidelines. And it's essentially a set of rules for formatting your source code into a consistent, readable, manageable, maintainable way, and making sure that you and your team use the same casing for variables and method names, that your names follow conventions such as being descriptive. You can even go down to real fine details such as tabs over spaces, new lines after a return, and before starting to code within a method if you really wanted to. Depends how anal you want to be about your guidelines. Now, I have strong opinions on coding styles, but they're loosely held. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean is that I know what I like and what I prefer to write, and that's what I use on my own projects. I'll follow those rules, my rules, but I'm also happy to follow the standards set out by others if I don't own the code base. And I'm also open to people telling me that my ideas and my rules are wrong, and if they can justify why my thoughts and my ways of working are wrong, then I will change to the better of my my career and my abilities. It's always about that constant learning cycle, really. And what I cannot abide by, though, is no rules at all. When you go from file to file and there are different naming conventions, there's different casing for public and private variables and method names, drives me up the wall. But what's even worse is when there's differences in the same file. Now, this is where I often lose my cool, and a keyboard goes across the room and a monitor out the window. Okay, maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but that's what I feel like doing. It makes my job so much harder, and it's something to bear in mind when you are writing your code. Coding style rules, they're not written in stone, and it's each to their own. There are even different rules between different programming languages. So for an example, when you're writing a C# method, your curly braces will go down onto the next line. But if you were writing in JavaScript, that curly brace stays on the same line as your method declaration. But no matter what rules that you choose, don't be precious about them. They should be good for you and your team, but stick by them. Don't mix and match. Don't one day decide, I'm going to use an underscore for a private variable, and then the next day don't do it. Find them and stick to them. So no matter the size of your team, you should be able to open any file and not be able to tell who wrote that code just by looking at the style in which it was written. Granted, sometimes you can easily tell if a unit test has been written by somebody when certain words show up. Now, I'm a sucker for using the word fish in my unit tests, and I was recently working with someone who had quite an unhealthy addiction to alpacas and possums. So you could easily see his code without trying. Hi, Ollie. Now, those kind of things in your unit test and that's acceptable to a point. But when you're using different case types for private and public variables and methods throughout the project, it's just a massive recipe for disaster and headaches. So why do you need to agree amongst your team what your standards should be? Now, as I've already pointed out earlier, having standards means that you build maintainable code, that it is easily understood, and that you can work with it really well. And these rules, that's what they do. They keep it readable. Obfuscation through bad code design is a real pain in the ass. And having code that is just written in any old style, any old way, whatever the flavour of the month is, just makes it even worse. And it makes it harder for people to follow that code through and know what's going on. So if your code base is clean and tidy and meets the standards that you've set out, regardless of what they are, you should be able to put it down, come back to it several months later, years later, quickly pick it up, read through it for a bit and know exactly what's going on because you understand what each of the variables are doing because they're descriptive and because the casing is right. You know when you're reading through a method that's a public variable, that's a private variable and things like that. It is that simple. So that's it for this holiday episode. And that's it for 2017. This is the last episode of 2017. Now, our next episode is out on January the 1st, where we will discuss what's to come in the near future for the Cynical Developer podcast. What I hope to achieve and do through the next 12 months. So, thanks for listening. Make sure that your New Year's resolution is to implement coding standards. And I hope you enjoy the holiday season wherever you are. May Santa bring you some nice new gadgets. And please, let me know what things that you got this year. Drop me some photos on Twitter or something. Always very jealous to see what you guys have bought or been given out there. So do share that. So until next time, thanks again for listening to Cynical Developer. I'm James Stoddart, and this was Coding Styles. If you have any questions about this or any other episode, then drop us an email, a tweet, or leave a comment on the website where you can find all the resource links, show notes for each episode. And if you enjoy this episode, please leave a review on your favourite podcast platform, iTunes, Stitcher, whatever it is, and help the Cynical Developer to reach more developers around the globe.